What's going on, Badger Nation? Welcome to the PPC Den podcast. I'm really excited today because we're going to be touching on a part of Amazon advertising that, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't get talked a lot about. I know that we've never talked about it on this show. So I'm really excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today. And hopefully we'll be able to really learn what it's like to run a high-powered, high-efficiency Amazon marketing program. Because today I'm super stoked to have Adam Lind on the show. Adam, how are you doing? What's up?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. And the reason why I say we've never talked about this is because we've never had a brand manager on the show before. So what I think is so fascinating, we've had Amazon SEO professionals, we've had Amazon agency owners, we've had Amazon PPCers, of course, obviously have hosted the show. And we've had people from AdBadger on here. We've had all different kinds of people on the show, individual sellers. But one category that we've never heard from are brand managers. And I think this is such an interesting perspective that you have. Adam, like, what do you do on a day-to-day? You're from Overdrive Brands, but tell us a little bit about like what a day in the life is for you.
Yeah, really, it's a balance between managing the sales of our 10 existing brands, looking for new products for new brands, and then optimizing the efficiency of the campaigns, external and on Campaign Manager for our more mature SKUs, and setting up plans for those existing SKUs that our team can go out and execute.
And, to wrap our head around it, are you saying that Overdrive goes out and purchases these brands? Is that how you acquire these 10 brands, or did you start them sort of in-house?
We start all of our brands in-house from scratch, build them from the ground up, and kind of build them SKU by SKU and kind of nurture them up to maturity.
Yeah, I also think that's fascinating too, because a lot of brand managers are working at, one larger company and they're the brand manager of one company, or they work at an aggregator and they're purchasing a lot of companies. But what I think is so fascinating about your experience is that, you've got 10 under your belt that you guys have researched, launched, started. And I'm like pretty fascinated because, the concept of like, oh, that person has the same 24 hours a day that I have. And I had a business coach one time, shout out Tim Conley. I had a business coach one time who basically said, hey, that person actually doesn't have the same 24 hours as you do. If they can set up the right systems and processes and build the right people, well, then they can actually get, thousands of hours of work done. And while you get 24 hours done. And I've always thought that was so fascinating. So like, I think what you just described of just like launching one, building another is the exact encapsulation of that. And for so many people on the show who are either solopreneurs, small brand owners, people that refer to themselves as like Amazon sellers. And then we have Amazon marketers who might interact with individual sellers or want to, work with a larger brand manager. I think it's so fascinating, your perspective. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. I was looking at your LinkedIn and the quick rundown that you wrote, and I'm sure there's so many more things. This is such a wide breadth, instrumental in new categories, launch and growth, 0 to 8 figures annually, create and execution of SKU, category, and brand budgets and forecasts. And that's what I think is really cool, that, marketing and customer acquisition strategies, replenishment and inventory planning, running multi-person offshore teams, category level P&Ls. So let's actually start getting into this. My first thing that I think is really fascinating is like, how have you thought about building, crafting your Amazon marketing team? Like, take me back to the beginning, like when, you were just starting out with a smaller handful of brands. Like, how did you decide to first start building the Amazon marketing team that you have today?
Well, first of all, it's a lot of trial and error. We're obviously not perfect, and, we're still learning as we go. But I think that initially we're managing it in-house ourselves, with not a whole lot of experience, specifically with Amazon. I had a lot of great experience in other industries, but not a lot of Amazon experience. And that worked well for us for a while. We knew it wasn't fully optimized, but we were kind of doing the best with what we had.
Around what year was that? Where you guys were like running it yourselves?
Probably 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
And we kind of just evolved beyond that and knew that in order for our brands to take the next step and be fully optimized, I say fully optimized, we're still, that's an ongoing challenge, but we knew we needed something a little bit more automated, and something a little bit more dynamic and strategic than we were capable of pulling off in-house.
Walk me through the lesson that you learned. Like, when did you realize that, hey, running it ourselves, and also who was running it internally? A lot of times I'll hear stories of, the inventory manager will also double as PPC marketer. Like, who was actually running the PPC, and when did you decide that wasn't enough? And how did you know that it wasn't enough?
Our head of product was running it at the time. He was doing that among about 12 other different jobs. And I don't know if I can point to a specific moment, but it was more of just as we acquired more and more knowledge and had more and more data points to reference, we just knew that we were leaving a lot on the table.
Mm-hmm. So when you first sought out to bring someone else, and you have so many decisions to make there, do you bring in a freelancer on a contractor basis? Do you hire someone part-time? Do you hire someone full-time? Do you work with an agency? Do you try to use a software? There's so many decisions you can make. And this is something that I talk to a lot of people about, because they'll come to me and they won't be sure exactly what they should be doing. And they'll be faced with the same questions that, I just proposed of like, well, what direction do I go in? Do I get a contractor for a fixed fee or hourly, or a small agency or a big agency? Or the list of options that you can take are so big. What direction did you go, and why did you feel like that was the best choice at the time?
Due to the size of our catalog, we knew we were going to need a flexible infrastructure to be able to fully tackle our catalog. So we felt that an agency was our best route. And when we were looking for, through different agencies, we wanted to make sure that they had the bandwidth to be able to manage the size of our catalog, and that they were flexible and understood, could get on the same page as our overall brand level goals and SKU level goals. So with the size of our catalog, we also knew that they needed to have technology on the back end that could automate a lot of it and kind of be guided by the brand level goals that we set.
For anyone out there listening who is maybe thinking about bringing someone on board, how did you assess that it was going to be the right choice? Or, do you have any advice for people who are maybe thinking about taking that same leap you had to help them find like the right partner for them?
Yeah, I think it's everybody's goals are different, and everybody's business is different. So just because Overdrive went one route doesn't mean that that's the correct route for you. And I think it's important to explore different options, and when you're exploring those, be fully transparent up front with the agency or the freelancer that you're inquiring, just about what you're trying to get to, where you're at, what your expectations are, where your roadblocks are, and things of that nature.
Do you think you were able to make a good decision because you guys had done it yourself for a little bit? So you sort of had some of your own experience that you were able to better understand, like the landscape of questions to ask and what to do, and like where to look and those kinds of things?
100%. It's hard to find what you need if you don't know what you need. And I think that time of us internally managing it allowed us to identify what our pain points were and have a more clear map on where we wanted to go.
That's cool. So with 10 brands that you personally are responsible for the overall P&L performance of them, how do you stay on top of, 10 brands overall profit and loss statement. So total amount of revenue, total amount of profit per brand. And then you have to go down further because you're also assessing PPC performance. So then you're parsing through ad spend and total revenue and ad revenue and ACoS and total ACoS. And then you want to do it on a per SKU basis as well. And that's a pretty big task. When did you begin to sort of say like, hey, I need to do sort of per SKU level analysis? And I guess, do you do per SKU level analysis? Like, walk me through how you go high level, but then also pay attention to things happening on a per SKU basis.
Yeah, well, first of all, a lot of credit goes to our internal data teams that have set up phenomenal tools to be able to automate a lot of the grunt work, so we can focus more on planning and be more efficient in our workflow.
When you say grunt work, do you just mean literally going and downloading the report, like getting the data and putting it into a readable format that you can analyze?
Yeah, exactly. And they've created dashboards that allow us to have a lot of information in one place, a lot of critical information that would be hard to pull. So that allows us to scale a lot easier. And to answer your question on if it's just SKU level or more high level, it's both. And I think that's important because each item is different. The inventory position is different. The goal is different. The ceiling of the particular product is different. Therefore, the goals should be different and treated differently.
So that's fascinating. So when you sit down and do your data analysis, and by the way, I think it's brilliant. I talk to a lot of people that are grabbing and building reports themselves. And I've always thought like the easier you could make data pulls, the faster you can have the data right in front of you so that you can do the things that you do best, like analyzing, top line, seeing the P&L, analyzing PPC spend, getting per SKU level metrics and all that good stuff. I think the faster that can go, and whether that means people are getting an assistant or someone on the team to prepare that for them, so if they're the decision maker, absolutely brilliant to be able to recognize that, hey, this is a task. If I'm going to be analyzing the data, maybe I shouldn't also be building, like going and grabbing the data. Right. So I think that's a awesome nugget there. Even if it doesn't take much time, and I believe it does, like pull the data and like get it in a format that works, it's still mentally taxing to do it. And if you can just show up and look at that data and view that data to be able to make decisions on it, all the more mental energy that you'll have to be able to dedicate and make decisions for that. So I love that. So what does your dashboard look like?
Well, we've got a bunch of different ones.
You got many.
Yeah, but we've got ones that are focused more around SKU level data, as far as like inventory units, inventory dollars on hand, weeks on hand based on sales rates. It's got 10-week, week over week sales and profit margins and things like that, along with the ad spend for each week. And then we've got ones that kind of show us where we're trending for the month and how that aligns with the forecasts that we've set.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how important would you say these dashboards are?
For us, I would say 10, because our entire company kind of operates around that. Without a plan, it's hard to give directive on where to go and what actions to take and what to dive into. And what needs the majority of our team's time allocated towards.
I love it. I'm thinking back on conversations that I've had, and I've always felt like our biggest and most successful clients have always, if they ask us a question about reporting, my answer is always, well, like if we're managing someone's campaigns for them, or if someone's looking at our software and they're saying like, hey, what do your dashboards look like? The first thing I always try to do is like, I know what our dashboards look like and I can tell them, but like, I want to know like what kinds of things are important to them, just so I have like a big like database of my own understanding. Like, oh, many people mention the same thing over and over. So like we should be like preempt that and build it. So I always try to get lots of different ideas. And I've always felt that the like fastest moving companies that we work with always knew what kind of metrics they wanted. They always knew what was important to them.
Yep.
And, they'd be able to look at an existing dashboard that we have and be like, oh, like I also need this other metric and I also need this other metric. Or do you have this broken down by this dimension? So definitely, I'm just like pulling out really interesting nuggets as you're sharing them of like really understanding the metrics that are most important to you.
Right.
I think is really fascinating. So to bring it to PPC, if you have like a per SKU level basis, and this is a very hotly debated topic, which is could you get per SKU level spend for your advertising? And of course, with sponsored products, you can. Sponsored display, you can. But unfortunately, with sponsored brands, you cannot. There's no report, unfortunately, for sponsored brands that tells you, somebody clicked on this product and purchased, because the ad itself has multiple products in it.
Right.
And that creates a lot of issues with data analysis. So I know that on our product dashboard that we have in our software, it says up top, like, because we sum up the spend per product for people and sum up the sales per product for people. But there's like this big disclaimer that like Amazon doesn't have this data available. Yes. So how do you cross that gap between, I guess the first question is, are you looking at spend on a per SKU basis? And if so, how have you thought about filling that gap of sponsored brand ads?
Yes, we do look at spend on a per SKU basis very closely. We have budgets on a per SKU basis. Obviously, as you alluded to, the sponsored brands has limitations with mapping that on the SKU or ASIN level. In that sense, we kind of view that separately. Obviously every brand's different, but the majority of our spend is towards sponsored products. So do we partake in sponsored brands? Yes. It's a small portion of our budget, and we kind of just view that separately, and don't look at it on a per SKU basis. We look at it more on the brand level.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard all kinds of things about how people try to fill it up, like fill that data hole that exists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it was a larger portion of our budget each month, we would probably approach it differently. But it's not as of right now.
Very cool. So I imagine then if you have sort of sponsored products and sponsored display data, you are able to view things on a per SKU basis. So spend, total revenue, ad revenue, so on and so forth. And then you're able to, so when you get that report, let's take an example that would require you to say, I need something changed. Or like, what would be something that would be like a yellow flag for you? Like, what kind of metrics would you be looking at? And then what actions would you do? Like, would you just inform someone? Do you have a process in place to sort of fix things like on a per SKU ACoS or a per SKU total ACoS or something like that?
As far as like yellow flags, I think it's totally dependent on the given SKU and what the immediate goal is for that SKU. So, for a new product that we just launched, we're not going to be near as ACoS focused as something that's a lot further down the line. So we're looking at, ACoS conversions, historical ACoS, how last 30 days compares to the historical data, and then how often it's hitting the budget in relation to our inventory levels. That's something that's really important to us as well. What was the other?
So yeah, if you once you see those things and maybe something is out of place, maybe you see something, the total ACoS is creeping up too high, or maybe the ACoS is going in the wrong direction. What kinds of involvement do you have? Like, how down in the weeds are you, or who are you interacting with? How do you bridge the gap between like seeing something that is a yellow flag for you that you want to take action on, and then what is your next step take? Like, are you sending somebody a message, an email?
Yeah. So we have a weekly process that we've agreed to with our agency on. Basically, we have parameters that kind of triggers which SKUs are going to be actioned on a weekly basis by the agency. So, we've got, ones with the biggest spend variance in comparison to the budgets that we set for that month. ACOS variance, what's our 30-day ACOS in comparison to our target ACOS, which we have on a SKU level, and ones that are hitting the budget that are also within a certain percent of our target ACOS. So that is happening automatically from the agency. They're bringing that to us with actions that we review, and that takes care of the majority of it. Now there's other ones that don't get picked up in that set of data. That typically we're just sending an email over to the agency on what we're seeing and where we'd like it to be. But typically we like to let the agency do what they're really good at, so we can focus on what we're really good at. So we try to keep that as separate as possible.
Very cool. I think it's so, and by the way, like that weekly process, was that something that you guys suggested to, and this is another, I'm like pulling out all these like amazing nuggets that you might not even be aware of. Just, I think one thing that I talked to so many companies and so many people from different companies, all sorts of positions. And I'll hear sometimes like, oh, hey, I'm working with this freelancer or this agency and I'm having a really hard time. Like I'm not getting what I need. Like I really want this, I really want that. And it doesn't feel like they're doing it. It doesn't feel like they're doing it. And sometimes my first question is like, well, have you asked them? And I've always thought that like most marketers are like happy to do what the company wants. They just might not be able to know what the company wants. So I've always felt like being able to advocate for, yourself and being able to say like, hey, like this report would be really useful to us. How can we make it happen? Or like, we need this process. I want to observe these metrics and then be able to send you a note about them. And then, give me confirmation when it's complete. I think that's such an incredible skill to know when working with contractors that even I myself have to remind myself sometimes, if we're hiring a writer to, help us with some copywriting and they maybe don't do exactly what I thought, I have to ask myself first, like, well, did I ask them to do it? Like there's a lot of responsibility on, you, the client, to interact, to ask questions, to let them know what you like and don't like, to let them know like what processes are going to be really helpful to help you achieve success. I think that's so valuable. So a lot of like, was that an intentional thing or it just came naturally? Like you just knew?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something that, we knew that, and I think it kind of circles back to when we were managing it internally, we knew that we would need a lot of communication back and forth. Mm-hmm. And, we wanted to make sure that we were always, that us and the agency were working together more so than working separately. Because, what's going on that side, we're making business decisions based on that. So having full transparency there is really important to us. And yes, it was something that right up front we had a discussion with them about. And we encourage them as well to like let us know, like push back on stuff that you can't tackle, so we're fully aware. We'd way rather know up front than just expect that something's getting done and it that actually not being reality.
That's amazing. I really like that. So I mean, already I've grabbed a lot of sort of operational cues from you. Like if I could sort of think back to this, you guys at Overdrive and you personally built up your own database of knowledge. Like you did some trial and error yourself. You knew the terms, you knew what total ACOS was, and you knew what ACOS per SKU means and all these different things. You knew that, and you had done some trial and error yourself with campaigns so that when you were able to bring somebody on board, you knew like what kinds of questions to ask and how to interact with them. You had at your size, you have an internal data team, but I think it's like such a lesson to have somebody on your team to prepare reports for you, to like create the dashboards for you, whether it be in a Google Sheet or whatever, so that the decision makers can do what they do best, which is make decisions, to look at this data, make decisions about where you should be making your investments. Knowing your products incredibly well, being able to see on a per SKU that level of performance, and then being able to sort of advocate for yourself and let your partners know, like, hey, these are things that we need. How can we get these? And having a good feedback loop there. I think there's some really good gems there that I definitely believe will help a lot of people listening. Any parting thoughts that you want to share with Badger Nation here?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I think that, for the most part, I think the transparency with whoever your advertising partner is extremely important, and setting goals is really important. And having a plan to achieve those goals, which will always change every day, but having a plan to stick to, I think is vital for any business's success.
Adam, so many good gems here. I feel like I personally am like a better operator now. I'm like ready to go, advocate more with the contractors that we work with. I'm like, need to start getting better about, not creating my own dashboards, having other people on the team create dashboards. So many great things here. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Talk soon.